Well, it's been a while since we've caught up with Linebooker, with the Uber of trucking, having just had a lengthy road trip. I can see that these guys have got to be booming, but we'll find out in a moment from co-founder Naude Rademan. Naude, always good to talk to you, not just because of what's going on at Linebooker, but because of the window it opens up for us on the whole logistics story here in South Africa. We know that the real story is Transnet is getting into more and more trouble, or so it seems, and trucking is getting bigger and bigger. And so those of us who use the roads see that the number of trucks on the roads have been increasing. So it's kind of something that is reflected in everybody's consciousness. But last time we spoke a few months ago, you guys were growing month on month at quite a rate. Has that continued?
Yeah, I think, Alec, we've, the last 7 months, I think the pace has picked up a bit. So our compound monthly for the last 7 months was above 20% a month. So we had to deal with a significant growth trend the last 7 months, but everything fairly well with no significant issues.
Now that's crazy. Exponential growth is 20% a year. You guys are 20% a month. That's more like warp speed. What's happening? Are people waking up to the reality that they can use this Uber for trucks?
Yeah, I think probably as our credibility grows in the market, I think there's more and more customers that approach Linebooker. I assume there's lots of word of mouth in the industry. So I think some of the older customers, that also compounds in the back end. And then I think some of the larger businesses that's been maybe keeping an eye on Linebooker for the last 3 or 4 years are now ready to engage with trying something new as they hear the credibility is there, and we've been to engage with trying something new as they hear the credibility is there, and we've been able to successfully deal with some large businesses. So we assume that's pushed the growth.
And you're going to celebrate your 6th anniversary in February next year, 6 years. When did it start? When did the hypergrowth begin?
Yeah, so I think we've been averaging around 10% for the last 3 years, but we've definitely, from where April, May, the numbers started pushing above 20% a month, and that's been sustained until still today. So probably April, May this year.
And your runway into the future, how long, when you do your planning, because clearly at this kind of a growth rate, month on month, 20%, you've got to start adding resources and doing all kinds of other planning ahead. How long are you seeing your runway?
Yeah, I think what helped us is I think the technology was fine to handle the increased volume, so that helps a bit. It's not all people, so the technology kind of handles most of it. But we definitely had to add some operational people into the system. From a runway perspective, I think difficult one to call, but the industry, again, 270 billion transport. So we still have a very small piece of the market, even if the growth rate's good. So we think sustaining 20% a month is going to be tough, but we think we can still maintain a good growth curve over the next couple of years. There's still enough space in the market to move.
Is this quarter, this September to December quarter, is that usually busier than other quarters of the year?
For the majority of the industry, this is the stressful time. So all FMCG, most of the consumer businesses, from September until probably end of December, the volume spikes significantly. Lots of unplanned events in the industry. So for our customers, this is the time they make their money. So this is also the time they need to get their stock where it needs to be without delay. Otherwise, their budgets for the year is blown.
I did a recent road trip from Johannesburg to the Western Cape, and having driven a lot between Johannesburg and Durban, I'm quite used to seeing trucks on the road, but it surprised me at the volume of trucks of freight that is being transported along that Western Cape corridor, particularly in the Free State, where it appeared as though it was exacerbated by the number of roadworks that are going on there. Just give us the insider's view on this. How much has that grown over the past few years on that corridor?
Yeah, I think all the main corridors would have grown. I think I assume the population and the economies of different cities also grow, that those routes will get more trucks on them. And as we discussed before, in the Transnet situation, we'll also add a couple of trucks on the main roads. I think the peripheral roads that are even in a worse state will also drive more trucks into the main roads, as that they can't do all the peripheral roads are in a bad state, so it also pushes more trucks onto the main roads, which private individuals use the most. So that's probably all three as an effect, I would think.
And Transnet, give us an update there.
Yeah, so we're not necessarily close to exactly looking into what's happening at Transnet. We just get the continuous approaches from customers, and many of them say that, especially in the mining sector, that they now have to look at trucking more of their volumes than usual because they have issues with Transnet. But we don't dive deep into what that is, but we get those requests are still coming through.
When you have a look in the United States, for instance, there's lots of very close monitoring on the amount of freight that is moved by road or that is moved by rail. And that's, I suppose, a more normalized situation. In our country, with Transnet really underperforming or perhaps not performing, it has to surely have pushed more freight onto the roads. And you've got to wonder, how much further can this go?
Yeah, it definitely, I think, had an effect to put more trucks on the road. Yeah, on the maintenance of the roads and how long it can go before it's a significant damage to the roads. I don't know, but you'll definitely see that effect, I think.
And the feedback that we've had on the lack of interest by third parties in using the Transnet rail network, there was a lot of hope that when they opened that up to the private sector, suddenly people would be rushing in there and improving the freight situation, certainly as far as rail is concerned. Has that been a surprise to you that you haven't had private sector jumping in onto Transnet, given the boom that you've seen on the truck side?
Yeah, I think for a certain sector of the industry that will be difficult. I think FMCG will be very difficult to move to rail, even if it works fairly well, because there's a lot of handling involved, a lot of movement from, let's say, warehouse to train. That's every time is a load and an offload, train to somewhere, offload again onto a truck, back to warehouse. So that time frame for fast moving goods versus straight point A to B, I think that sector will struggle to move on to rail. Obviously the mining commodities will move as soon as they can, but I think the rest of the industry, it's going to be a difficult decision or a slow move before that happens, I think.
So we're not going to see too many trucks going off the road through the competition from rail, but what you guys do at Linebooker, surely the wastage factor will be reduced. Maybe for those who've never heard of Linebooker before, just explain what it is that you do that is making the movement of freight more efficient.
Yeah, I think on a high level, so we try and use our technology to coordinate freight between customers and transport a bit more efficiently. So we sign up 17,000 trucks that we've already vetted the transport businesses. And then customers can log on to the platform on the other side and connect with these transport companies quickly and efficiently in different ways. You can connect on fixed rates for 12 months or 6 months. You can connect, I need a truck now in the next 3 hours. So I think that coordination is a bit more efficient for the industry. Probably a less empty loads for the transporters, or they got visibility of more work to keep their trucks busy, and customers that normally struggle with consistency supply, especially now from September to December, have got access to more trucks, so your supply gets a bit better, especially when you're in crisis situation or something happens.
Just explain that consistency of supply. Did you have any issues at all by, say, a customer came to you and they wanted to move something during this crisis or this very busy period? Were you able to fulfill those needs?
Yeah, and I think for the first time we feel with the growth of the last 7 months, we deal with quite a large volume. So I think the network and the platform was properly stress tested now in season. So that the customers that use the Linebooker platform, their supply was fairly consistent. And there was a couple of industry surprises, especially in Durban, that customers had to make emergency arrangements for additional trucks. And the platform responded well. I think the customers on Linebooker got the majority of their volume moved very quickly. And I think the rest of the industry suffered. We had requests from some businesses we never dealt with before to assist on short notice. So there was a bit of a disruption, especially in Durban over the last couple of months.
Was that because of the natural events that affected Durban?
I think it's normally this time of season there's a volume imbalance, so there's too much or a lot of volume that needs to be sent out of Durban and not as much running into Durban. And then Tongaat added another issue on top of that, the sudden business rescue. Let's say Tongaat usually delivered their sugar, their range transport to all of their customers. And suddenly business rescue, none of the transporters could drive directly for Tongaat. They're too nervous, they won't get paid. And then all of those customers that buy sugar needed to quickly arrange their own transport to go and collect. Now, that created a bit of they didn't know who to talk to, they didn't have trading relationships with transporters in that area, and this needed to happen in a couple of days. So that was a good, I think, crisis example, and I think the customers on Linebooker platform, those loads were published. I mean, all those transporters on the network, we pay them, so they didn't have to worry about payment risk. So we could quickly adjust to move those volumes into customers.
You don't think about that, but those cane trucks, especially in the northern part of KwaZulu-Natal, there are lots of them on the road, and I suppose when Tongaat Hewlett went into business rescue, it's a natural knock-on effect that those people who were moving, just bringing in the sugarcane to the mills, would no longer have been that confident of doing it if business rescue means you got to wait for your money.
Yeah, that's definitely it. So some of the transport work that has been done, they probably wouldn't get that money until the business rescue is. So it's a big issue. I mean, they've got an immediate cash flow issue, and they will have an immediate issue of how do I continue with this work because my exposure just grows. So they will definitely, any business they would stop, or they would need some other commitment of who's the paying party going to be, then we'll move again.
But from your side, if you were able to pay the transporter, where do you get paid?
No, we get paid from the customer that receives the stock from Tongaat. So we act on behalf of let's say, whoever the retailer is that buys sugar, or the beverage business that buys sugar from Tongaat. They operate on our platform, and we then arrange a collection at Tongaat.
But what about the cane, the sugar cane itself? Did you move much of that? Because you'd have had to get the money from Tongaat for that.
Yeah. No, we're not involved in that side of the business or sector yet, so I'm not sure how they dealt with that. We were just on the finished product side that went into the retailers or beverage businesses and all other sugar buyers.
It's extraordinary to have a real life example like that. And generally speaking, we've gone through the business model in the past. We've spoken about it. It's irresistible that you're sitting on the one side of the if you're outside of it, and if you wanted to use a taxi in the old days, you pick up a phone, you got to find some taxi, hope he's going to be okay. Whereas today we know we just go online and we get Uber. With Linebooker, of course, it's much more sophisticated, but with supply chain disruptions and issues like that, you do need an alternative to the old way. And is that message, is it getting through even to conservative? I'm really looking at the one side, those people who are using your service from the company's point of view. Are they more inclined to now just pick up the phone to you or get online with your platform than they would have been in the past?
We think so. We think that's driven the growth in our volumes or volumes through the platform, is that there's more businesses comfortable to approach and looking for a new solution. And I think the basics behind that, as I said, most businesses struggle with consistent supply. So our principle is we give you access to a network that's 10 times as big as the one you've got now. So you should have better supply, more options, better flexibility if you can connect with 17,000 trucks versus 400. I mean, and if the technology is efficient, then the speed's there. But I think the key is if you've got a bigger network to talk to, and then you've got more options. If your volume spike, there's more options. If something suddenly happens in the industry and you need more trucks, or something happens to your current suppliers, then you've got immediate access to more. So I think that kind of is the key thing, and the technology and everything else in the middle just makes it easier.
17,000 trucks. Of how many trucks are on the road in South Africa?
Sure. There's no specific data sets around that, but we think it should be at least 300,000.
All right.
So that's now small vehicles, larger vehicles, mining industry. So it's a lot.
And what is your universe? If you take out those vehicles that would never be in the Linebooker universe, and what I'm trying to get to is what percentage of your market have you got to so far?
Yeah, so we've operated in a certain, or started in a certain sector, which is probably majority the taut liner flatbed truck. So I would guess that 17,000, probably 80% is in that sector. The next sector, which we've just started in, which the majority of the trucks we think sit in, would be the mining sector, which is tippers and that different. So we would guess there's probably another, in that sector, only 80,000 trucks in that sector and the rest we think should be the smaller vehicles. But there's no specific data sets in the industry, so you can't find specific numbers, but that's what we estimate.
And who are the operators in the mining sector in moving the minerals? Are they big companies, or is it kind of a guy who gets a package from a retirement package and he goes into the trucking business in his retirement? Are there any of those kind of people?
There's a good spread. So there's majority is privately owned businesses that you don't necessarily would hear about, but they're large. They would have 300 to 600 trucks, some of them. So that's very big businesses. Then there's hundreds of again, privately owned businesses with, let's say, 30 to 100 or 200 trucks. And then, again, hundreds of businesses that's got 5 to 10 to, all probably privately owned, owner-operated mostly. So, again, very segregated, very good place to coordinate because there's so many players, they don't all know about each other. So, to coordinate that, we think is a good opportunity.
So that's your focus for the next years, to move out of the area that you're now dominant in into particularly the mining area.
Yeah, not move out of. I think we'll continue to operate where we are and grow that business. but we do want to spend a bit more time and additional resources focusing on the mining sector and see if we can deliver some value in that area for customers.
And just to close off with, if you were to estimate how many wasted loads are no longer being wasted because of you guys. In other words, in the past, a truck would go from point A to point B and go back from point B back to point A empty. Or in the rare occasion, they'd have something. Now with Linebooker, presumably, they'd have a much higher chance of having a load both ways, and you'd be able to use less. There'd be less trucks on the road. I'm trying to find out a little bit of hope here.
Yeah.
You know, in South Africa, we're scratching all over for some hope.
Yeah, I think there's probably two things to that. So you get two scenarios. So you might get scenarios where a truck needs to return to some other destination empty. But I think you also have a lot of scenarios historically where that truck needs to wait for another load. So the last resort is running empty. That's expensive. So that transporter might say, okay, I'm going to wait 2 or 3 days in Joburg or Cape Town to get a load, and then I'm going to go. So I think what the network has done when it gets a nice volume, it takes away those 2 or 3 wasted days. So that transporter probably can pick up a load without having to wait a day or 2 to go back to their destination. And then you've got the last resort where that transporter at times needed to run empty. You might pick up a load, so the network can connect him with loads that he doesn't have to run empty, back empty. But I think
it sounds to me like it's actually changing, transforming the industry. If you didn't have Linebooker and you come from that industry, would you see that as an entrepreneurial opportunity now to go into the trucking business?
Yeah, I think when we spoke about it a while ago, so at last we got some unsolicited feedback, and from some medium-sized transporters that came back to us and said, listen, I've been able to grow my business over the last 2 years because of my access to Linebooker, meaning I don't need any sales teams. I have very little admin burden because you pay me, and I can see what volume is available, so I can build my business and buy more trucks. So we've seen it in the data, but we've now started to get some transporters saying, listen, this has helped me build the business. So yes, I think now that the volume is there, and you can potentially have a look at what volume flows through Linebooker and say, here's an opportunity for me to start a transport business. Again, the most complex things I don't have to do. I don't have to do sales. I don't have to have a massive financial team and manage that cash flow risk. So 2 key things are gone. I just need to be able to operate the truck efficiently and just focus on that. So I think that opportunity is there.
Fascinating. Naude Rademan is the co-founder and CEO of Linebooker. I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.